Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Tired. How are you?
All right.
I'm looking at parts of the abstract that I submitted to the conference and how it compared to. I reviewed some of the video that I reviewed what we discussed last week. I was saying I reviewed some of what we discussed last week just before the meeting, and it's so funny because it's like the thing I actually submitted and some of the way I talked about it in the video, like it was so. I understand why they were so sort of almost like inverse or like complement, like very different in what was said. But it's tough to. Um, I think it would be very. I guess I'll say I appreciate everybody staying with me through that very winding and very sort of uh, things not being clear, things being sort of inverted in what I was saying.
Oh, okay.
So I will. I don't think I'll have as much to say this time around, but I appreciate that discussion. And I don't have any major updates for my paper, but I've definitely been thinking about it a lot and thinking about. I've really been stewing a bit on. I'll share my screen as I'm looking at some of the stuff here.
All right.
Where's some of the components of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Sorry, I missed the beginning of what you were saying, but I'm happy to read all like drafts of the mind as a blank paper as much as you want to share. I'm happy to leave comments before the conference is coming up. I guess my update is feel good about what I'm working on. I don't know. I feel like when the deadline arises, I'll be able to put something good together and put something together that's like appropriate for the conference. But I feel like I'm not ready for that yet. I need to keep doing what I'm doing and taking disorganized notes and thinking about it without writing anything down. But maybe that's just an excuse. But I feel like I'm making progress, even though I still have like nothing concrete to share.
I think okay, I'll start recording and just go from there. Whoops. Yeah, okay. Yeah, for me to kind of, I'll just bridge into my own stuff here. This was something from one of the drafts. I think it's from one of the. Is this actually? Let me see if this is actually the conclusion. I think this was sort of a part of the actual one of the conclusion, I believe, to the version that I sent, or like not the conclusion, but like the final part of the abstract or something like that. And I think thinking about it and thinking this is centering it back on my thoughts and submissions. I think to step a little bit out of that specific submission and just talk a little bit about like really big things that are, excuse me, in my mind right now and have quite a lot of gravity. Actually, I just erased a whiteboard, otherwise I would try to show that. Let me see here. Okay, can I? No, it's not going to do that. All right, bear with me. I look at my phone, which I took a picture of the whiteboard before I erased it. And this. So I'll say it's like big ideas on my mind. Sure. So one of them, which we'll get to later, I don't know if anybody else saw the Fristons talk that Amanda said. And I was gonna ask Amanda, how'd you find it? But then I guess it's because it was through Michigan. I don't know if that's what it was, but it's there.
Yeah, I got an email about and then I didn't actually make it. I saw
3/4 of it. And I'll talk a little bit about it. It's the teaser for that is it was both very Fristonian in like big ideas and math and like yeah, like this is it, and like excellent articulation and appeal, and also like well okay, and so there's that part of it which is cool and how I often feel about Friston stuff. And I'm not a Friston hater by any means. I'm just not. I don't really know. I don't even know if I can say I'm agnostic. I just like I don't know which. So I have like that. I guess I'm trying to say whatever it is. I have like very classic, typical feeling of Friston stuff, which of course makes sense. And then I was actually quite excited. I was excited because I'm taking in my master's course, I'm doing statistics and probability as a part right now. And at some point, like he kind of broke it down into, he had a really nice, I'll make this a little, can you, oh, am I sharing my screen or no?
Yes.
I am. Can you?
But your browser's over it, so you have to go to the other side. The other thing that's... There we go.
Yeah, I usually have them kind of... Well, this is kind of okay for now, I guess. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I know I'm still over here, but... I don't think this is the ideal slide for this, because I didn't get all of them. I did record it, and I got a transcription of it. I got a screen recording and everything else, but like I'm not really prepared to talk about it in depth. But there was a way of this wasn't the best one for it. Oh well. He mentioned what I really appreciate from Friston is he said he kind of broke things down into his approaches about things coming from a probability or statistics point of view, and he was talking about some of the things that I'm learning and starting to learn later on in the training that I'm receiving, which is actually exciting and kind of nice to feel like, okay, like if I go down this road, I'm going to be able to be more literate in some of the probability language that's coming up in things like Friston's work and whatnot. So that's actually exciting. And I'll say more about that later, but to kind of cut to, I don't know if the chase is really the right word or not. There we go. I'll make this smaller and this bigger. And okay, now I remember what I usually do. I'm a little slightly different setup, but I'll leave this here, I guess, and eventually get to like other papers and whatnot. So yeah, Friston stuff. And there's particularly, I'm trying to really segment the discussion on that and what I'm trying to say with my big ideas. So the thing I want to say about big ideas is when Friston, damn, I don't have a great slide for it. It was something akin to this. It wasn't just sort of external to sort of internal. In this key, it looks like this is a sensory, external to sensory state, sort of like the mesh point. He was talking about moving from external to a sensory and active state feedback loop. And then sort of this is like a really deep state. So it was sort of, he in his very Fristonian way had a really nice way of explaining moving towards sort of a much more nuanced set of I'll try to go on camera to see this, a much more nuanced set of interrelations between internal and external, and sort of it kind of reminded me a little bit of Fuchsian horizontal vertical causality stuff, but it was exciting in that way. And I think I'll say for this point, something like nuanced interrelations for that. And I'll leave it for that. Okay. So let's first then. 11, dizzy, all the way down. Allergy. Something like that. Those things are kind of there. We talked a lot about this sort of scholasticism into enlightenment, into rationality, into the Copernican era, into this, the Enlightenment, age of reason, and that whole shifting around. Like we've talked about that quite a bit. I'm not going to really do that here. Also, I kind of missed the start of the talk, and I don't know if he was like had some big wonderful introduction about unifying the cognitive science or why they're not unified. I kind of allegedly will get an email of this, but I didn't like a re-emailed the video, but I signed up for it, but they didn't really email me anything. Like the Beacon versus CBMM10 debate about the importance of biology. I would also say, Kristen, obviously he looks at brains all day and he's not gonna, diss them. He was very on, he kind of he'll give a thumbs up to, biomimicry, like integration, neuro AI. He's obviously not out on neuro AI. And someone asked a nice question about, the future and what do I do as a young person or some of this stuff. And he's like, you got to be, multidisciplinary, look at math and probability and neuroscience and machine learning if that's what you want to do and all that stuff. So he's very, very generalist, which it would be, if he didn't say that, it'd be kind of surprising. Okay. He's like, nope, just focus on one thing. So all of these things are here. And I guess what I'll say is, looking back at the original abstract that I sent, which I think is over here, and I don't really want to, I'm seeing it, but it's also kind of interesting to see again in this context. Like this abstract really goes into, there's sort of the intro, and then there's over time, and there's this big dip into, like cognitive science and the computer and the mind as the brain stuff. A little bit of Fourier is a challenge, like Fourier and embodiment and practical embodied cognition and stuff like that is challenging that. And sort of where I'm going with that in terms of the relationship to technology and identity and agency and what's going on there. And so I guess it was kind of inspiring to look at this again in the sense of, it reminded me of when I remember definitively writing this and thinking about how when I was writing it, it was, there was sort of my main stuff that I wanted to say. And there were some reach goals that, or like sort of, not reach goals, but like aspirational things I'm concerned about. And I'm not sure if I'm going to ultimately put some of those things in this paper or not yet. But it was really nice to kind of, I'm really happy that I wrote the abstract the way that I did, even if it's not a great abstract for a single paper. And so I think where I'm at is everything we talked about last week, and you kind of heard me really awkwardly stumble around, and you were very patient and very helpful in that and said, you need to tighten this up, and oh, here's what I remember. That was really great, and I appreciate that. So thinking about that, thinking about my big ideas, thinking about the paper pyramid for the project and other things that I want to do is kind of what would be a really good thing to do with this specific paper? Like what's the most use, like what are the ways we can take the sort of mind as the blank, you know, mind as this thing, and push forward. So I don't like, I'm not gonna go into, I'm not gonna like highlight, I'm not gonna mention Friston in the paper unless it's like a line like, oh yeah, by the way, like this whatever. But first is not gonna be the paper. I might mentioning like diverse intelligences and sort of um, like, I think neurodiversity. Okay. I think there's a space for this sort of thing. The I would like to make some not the precursor to a dovetail, an affordance or a possible dovetail in the future away from this paper, and saying, when I do some more, not critique, but maybe more assessments, I don't know, of how the transition from science. We had some really nice discussions last time, which I don't have pulled up here right now, but if you recall last time, we had a really nice discussion towards the end about Bika. We had a discussion about this sort of I guess I mentioned Hinton and backdrop from the brain there, and all this other stuff about whatnot. We had a discussion about I don't know, Bradley's and sort of the commentary on higher life forms or higher intelligences and what they do, and sort of the potential folly of that viewpoint, and we had a really nice discussion about you know, phylogeny, decision evolution, Bika, super sampling, those things. We had a little mention of the this out of the way, the Spandrel of San Marco, the Gould thing, and just sort of that stuff. Like, that was a really pleasant discussion. I'm not sure why I'm mentioning that here again. I lost my train of thought a little bit, but suffice to say, I think I'd really like to just be strategic in this paper and say, understand there's a lot of things, there's a lot of like big places I want to make inroads to, and some of them aren't going to be at all really directly in part of the paper. Some of them can be a little bit more so, but I think as I continue to, I'll summarize by saying, as I churn on the paper, it's nice to kind of see some of these things, and in terms of our actual project, like the actual methods project that we're here for, are making a little bit of progress in terms of crystallizing into these chunks of things that we can talk about. So I'll leave it at that. I was kind of waving hands towards something instead of saying, here's what it is. But that's okay. I'm going to declare I'm definitely not at my most cognitively lucid today. I'm exhausted. I think I'm getting sick, and I finally got good sleep for the first night in like a week and a half.
Wow.
And I hope that continues and don't get sick tomorrow. But I feel like I'm close. So that's not a cop out. Don't, feel free to have comments and critiques and excuses. And I very much appreciate Amanda mentioning, hey, show me the reviews or whatnot. I'm looking forward to this and doing that. But that's kind of where I am with this stuff. So that's kind of my ISPM update for myself.
How many pages do you have so far, like in the paper?
I mean, outside of the abstract, not really anything.
Okay.
Like, it's not there. I have a bunch of notes, but they're not really put together into, like, I could give some generic page total of, I don't know, what's this? Like
It's like 3, but yeah.
I think I have like probably 6 total with all the different notes that are in these things, and like some scraps and some will be there. So it's just I have like the count of mass is there, but it would have to be obviously refined a lot
Oh yeah.
and put into a structure. So like there's stuff. It's just not. It's not in it. It's not in the final form yet, and that's kind of where my challenge ahead is putting it all into one document and making it a thing. So
Right.
yeah.
That yeah, that sounds like where I am. I've been trying to like add comments to that Notion page with the abstract I submitted. The text is just the abstract. It's linked at the top of this. Yeah.
Oops, hit the wrong one.
So
Yep, there it is. Sure.
So it looks messy because I am not editing the abstract. I want to remember exactly what I submitted. And so I've been leaving comments. And I feel like my thoughts have developed a lot since the abstract submission, but also I feel like the way that I organize things in the abstract, I do want to stick to. Now I just need to figure out how to connect all the dots, figure out what texts I want to use to help connect the dots. So I guess and then I haven't looked at the notes in this document yet, but it also has pages of notes, which I haven't kept that updated. So how about I'll do what I've been saying was going to do for weeks and put all my notes in here. I like keeping the abstract clean, but I'll just try to dump the scraps into this, and then I'd appreciate any thoughts on any of it, even if it's just highlighting something and saying, what does this mean? Or highlighting something and saying oh, this reminded me of this. Just anything, or something more substantial, I guess, but whatever you're willing to note, I'd appreciate. I guess, first I'll actually consolidate the notes. But I feel good about the abstract still.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm all for using Notion. I think Bradley's sort of ambivalent about it. Do you, for the sake of us doing this, do you want to keep stuff in Notion, or do you want, should we move to Google Docs for the code editing? How do you want to do that?
That's up to you. It's the same to me. Whatever, if there's something in particular that you would find most convenient, then you pick.
Okay, do you have a preference, Bradley?
Usually Google Docs, but you could use Notion if it's more comfortable. I'm biased towards Google Docs though.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm for the writing process. I think I'm going to put mine in Google Docs, but I think I totally get writing and assembling notes isn't the same thing to me. So I'm fine with using Notion if you want to put it there, but I'll also make mine. I'm going to do my writing, the things that I will make. I actually thought this was a doc, but I don't. It appears to be a Word document file, which is weird. Or maybe it's just this strange background that I have currently. Maybe that's what it was. Anyway, I will have a document soon for that. So cool. Anything else you want to say about your stuff, Amanda, before we shift?
I guess whatever. No, I'll save it for when we talk about this Voros paper,
Okay.
which I think is the last thing on the agenda. Didn't we still have to finish one of the papers you shared?
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit last time about finishing that paper, and then I think this is the Voros paper that I copied a little bit of. So yeah, I'll, eh, if we're ready to go on, I'll quickly go through. There should be much less than 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes to talk about this, and then we'll go finish the other paper, which I believe is not this one. This one came up, and I haven't really fully looked at it yet, so I don't know if it's worth our time. But this one from Ben Peters. We were probably around here, I think. We didn't have that much left. But then I'm happy to kind of jump into Amanda's paper. I didn't really get to read that, so I will defer to you on that if you're ready to do that.
Yeah, sure.
But okay. But yeah, so what do I want to say about this? I just threw a bunch of very simple screenshots on this just to kind of put it up here. And unfortunately, I didn't find this page to be very useful. Like, I wish there was a introduction. Like, I would love to see how either Kristen wrote about it or whatever, because this is a very captivating, title. But it doesn't really talk much about it here. It's just, it's hosting this guy. He's a big name. He's cool. His work has implications in how we think about AI. Like, that's kind of all it says. I was like, okay.
Maybe that was part of like the process of getting Friston to actually come talk. It was like that was a condition. Like he could be writing the talk on his plane ride there, so he needed to leave it vague.
Oh, it was? Or you just...
No, I'm just joking. Just I'm imagining that would be one reason to keep the description vague, is if like that would make it easier for the speaker. If you're Carl Friston and you could write something, last minute, and it would be good.
Well, and the thing is, like, I really do want to find out the start of it, because how do I want to say this? Like, it's hosted by the computer science department, and AI is, from our CBMM discussions, we know that AI is sort of the thing you have to pay tribute to in some sense. But the talk, and I kind of came in half an hour late, like 20 minutes late, and I missed the intro, which would be the part that I'm most curious about in some ways. But there was a lot of, I'll just go through this so you guys can maybe see a little bit better. Like, there was some interesting talk about autopoiesis. There was, and I don't really know I have no idea what particle he's getting at here. I kind of just came in here and I missed part of it. But there's a lot of talk about Bayesian stuff and Markov blankets, and then there's sort of a nice. There was some homage being paid to Helmholtz. Helmholtz team brain, a lot of Bayesian stuff. Richard Gregory, Richard Feynman, Hinton, and Peter Dian. I'm least familiar with Peter Dian, I think, and maybe Richard Gregory. But do you know them, Bradley? I don't quite.
Peter Dian does a lot of computational neuroscience stuff. Richard Gregory is more historical. I don't really am not familiar with that work.
Okay. Lemon water. God bless. All right. So, there's not a whole lot for me to say here, because I really wanted to get some of the big conceptual stuff, and then it came up in the questions. I might try to remember. I can look here to see what was said. I do have a kind of a transcript of it, at least the part that I was there for. But it's kind of undifferentiated and a little smushed together. Yeah. So all right. I don't want to linger here too much, but they're kind of going from. These are from different points, but I put them next to each other to kind of get to what he was doing. like he kind of started off here with this free energy minimization or free energy either action selection, perpetual inference, and this sort of state of things. But then he kind of adjusted this into adding planning and inference as something that feeds into the perception inference, I guess. And that was his, or later on in the slides. There were a lot of interesting things said here in terms of, this so reminds me of Avery's work about allostatic kinds and some of the internal and external stuff alongside of Fuchsian things. But basically, creating some more nuance and different kinds of feedbacks from sort of the what is sort of the external facing and sort of the internal facing and how deep those things are, I guess. And making a, I don't know, adjusting like the views from this to this. And I wish there was a little more, like, if I had the wherewithal all the time to say, so how do you see this as unifying cognitive science? Like there was no direct thing about that, but it was interesting. There were some like specific points about let me look at I've posted some things in Slack and it's not coming up for me here. Where are you, Slack? Okay, it's very slowly loading for some reason for me. Because I listed a series of comments in Slack as I was watching it. Okay, I'll look at my other device because sorry about that. Okay, so it's some things that stuck out to me with this comes with epistemic affordances. I'd love to say, what is an epistemic affordance to you, Dr. Friston? Expected utility theory came up. Information seeking parts give way to more practical things. Okay. Natural selection is Bayesian model selection. Same principles, but how they apply differently on different scales. How constraints and entropy, how entropy affects things differently as the constraints vary. Those were kind of some broad concepts that came up, but I don't really know what to say specifically. And there wasn't like a big, there was no concluding slide like, here are my final thoughts, blah, 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 blah. It was kind of just whatever, and a discussion. A nice discussion, but very, very, very Fristonian. So I don't know. I would try to answer a question if you have one about it, but most of it will be trying to find, I would really see his framing for the talk, because I have no idea what the framing for the talk was. And I remember a little bit of the Q&A, but I don't think that's it. I don't think there's a lot to really, maybe Saturday if I read it more, we can talk about it then, but I don't know. Any comments or just want to move on to the other paper? Let's see here. Okay, I'll take that as a let's move on, which I'm happy to do. There's only so much justice I can give to that anyway. Neurophenomenology revisited from naturalism to dialectics. I don't know anything about Boros. Should we see who he is, or does anyone know who?
Sure. He works at a school, a Slovenian school, I think. I saw at the end of the paper that it was like funded by the Slovenian Research Academy under the title of like investigations or something. It just it sounded like like sponsored. Basically, it was funny to see what like another government, because it seemed public. I guess I didn't look into it, but the idea of like public funding of philosophy was kind of funny to me as someone who lives here and not in Europe. But maybe it was private actually. But his philosophy falls into like a really specific niche that I think is like relevant to, I think it's adjacent to our niche. Yeah, so he writes on Varela a lot, and like continental phenomenologists, and his tweets are good. He has nice little like snapshot tweets of things he's reading, and of like both published papers and also like books that like things that look like we should add them to our reading list potentially.
Okay, cool. Whoops. Yeah, I'll look at that later. Okay, I'll let you proceed forward. I don't know if there's probably not a hub. I'll make a new page for this here in Notion. If there's one yet.
Oh no, I meant to make one. I uploaded a PDF that has some of my scribbles in it though. Yeah, so I think I said something like this last time, but when we read that Problems and Hopes paper, and we went into it kind of thinking like, yeah, it could be cool to see a critique of Varela, but like from Varela's side, like from someone who's already on board with the project. And then that paper wasn't really that so much, but this one I think has some of that. I guess, Jesse, I think you said you didn't get to read it very closely, but it's relevant to the naturalizing phenomenology bit that you wrote. It kind of talks about, and this was at the end of the paper, but I think we can talk about it quickly first because it was less interesting to me. He talks about the author talks about the different meanings of naturalism and like the sense in which Varela was trying to naturalize phenomenology, but also issues with thinking about his project in those terms, different things you can mean by naturalizing and why maybe that's not such a useful framing of neurophenomenology if we're trying to like make progress in this discipline of neurophenomenology. So he talks about, yeah, like their word that's the dialectics part of it, from naturalism to dialectics. He kind of argues that we should set aside talk about naturalizing, and focus on other aspects of Varela's work. And then the rest of the first part of the paper was a really nice explanation of neurophenomenology, and he points out where Varela is not very clear, and like it's a very well researched paper. Most of the citations like are Varela, but he did a lot of nice work explaining and making things clear where maybe Varela was not so much.
Yeah, can we just go over the abstract just so I get a sense of things fully? Because I mean, this like even this looks like intriguing from this just. Oh, I guess you highlighted that here too. Yeah. Murmurs in the Cathedral. This sounds almost like ironic on a few layers for me, but I don't know if that's what it's getting at yet. But yeah, as far as like just abstract, I examine the prospect of naturalizing phenomenology, which is interesting because I guess you're saying maybe he shouldn't do that later on. I don't know. I didn't see that part. I follow two main objectives. The first is exegetical, namely, there's a pronounced discrepancy between Roller's early work in neurophenomenology and his later works on naturalizing phenomenology. With the former receiving considerable scholarly attention, the neurophenomenology part, I just lost myself, and the latter receiving is comparatively unknown. Discrepancy further exacerbated by the fact that due to his untimely death, Varela failed to produce a comprehensive view of naturalization, leaving us with a plethora of suggestive fragments scattered throughout his later work, some of them published Thus, briefly recapitulating the original neurophenomenological program in section 1, I bring some of these fragments together in section 2 and make an attempt elucidating Burroughs' position on the topic. And his second objective in this paper is critical. So in section 3 opens with the question of whether the idea of naturalizing phenomenology in the context of neurophenomenology makes sense. I argue that it does not, and should therefore be discarded. The reason for this is twofold. A strong case could be made that the idea of naturalization is ultimately at odds with the spirit of neurophenomenology. And secondly, and relatedly, Burroughs' lax use of the term not only puts it at odds with more ordinary interpretations of naturalism, but also risks emptying it of any substantive content. Okay, so that's an interesting argument. Curious how he proceeds. Actually, take this here.
So yeah, he starts by talking about how Varela thought about the hard problem of consciousness, which I thought that he explained it very well. I feel like a few authors we've read have talked about like dissolving the problem, or like making it so this riddle is no longer a riddle. It just, this hard problem disappears once you question the assumptions. So this explained like what that meant, what that can mean. And then so he frames Varela in relation to this problem in analytic philosophy, the hard problem, and then in relation to phenomenologists, talking about how I guess eventually getting into mutually informed constraints and like what exactly the role of phenomenology should be.
Okay. Excuse me.
And like the author kind of explains where in the, like where to look for progress in neurophenomenology, like possible paths to go down. I thought that was like a cool theme of the paper. Was it was almost like action oriented. Like it explains why like you can't just theorize about this stuff. There's a sense in which you have to learn by doing. And then at the end, there are like some kind of specific examples of that when he gets into the 3 strands of the braid or whatever, but we can wait until we get there. But yeah, kind of theme of the paper was that it was emphasizing the, like what it would look like if we do phenomenology. I guess, sorry, go ahead.
I have a point, but I don't think it's related to your current train of thought, so I don't want to. It may be a good time to say it now before we go to other things, but I don't know if this is what you want to do. I have a comment about this paragraph, the members in the cathedral part. I guess I'll say it. It's very interesting because, and maybe it's because I'm looking for it and now I can see it the way that I am, or whatever, sort of my own confirmation biasy kind of stuff, which could be the case. But this part here, yeah, he proposed this thing about marrying modern cognitive science. So that's Varela. Marrying modern cognitive science and a disciplined approach to the human experience, which makes sense, like, on becoming aware, right? Like that whole, we got to make a discipline, the whole Depraz and her cardio phenomenology, or even the paper about micro phenomenology. We wanted to be disciplined and regulated, right? A school of thought devoted precisely to the study of consciousness. By synthesizing science and phenomenology, a school of thought. Okay, so he's saying phenomenology as a school of thought, right? That's what he's saying is. Okay. Um, However, aware of the rampant heterodox nature of the proposal, they anticipated there would be murmurs in the cathedral. On one hand, there are murmurs in the cathedral of science whose identity has been traditionally based on opposition to the evidential force of everyday lived experience. To these concerns, Varela suggested phenomenology has to become active participant in the scientific inquiry and that had to be naturalized, integrated somehow into the edifice of the natural sciences. Yeah, this is quite interesting to me because it's before we even go into the cathedral phenomenology, which I think is an interesting set of metaphors. Also, like specifically the word cathedral, and even trying to account for like kind of Varela's context and like similar to like like I'm not going to say that part, but like certain cultural modern European or Latin American influences on that and maybe colonial things too. But beyond that, I would say it's interesting to see science whose identity has been traditionally based on opposition to the evidential force of our everyday lived experience. And I think that's quite interesting. I would again reference theory and reality. Oops, what's in here? Yeah, by Peter Godwin Smith. In that the sort of the cresting into the scientific era has like a lot to do with a certain kind of empiricism and a certain way of valuing experience. And it's sort of this tension between experience, like the only thing we can know is that which we do experience, but that which can be generalized and almost made into objective measurement of experience. And there's an interesting difference, I think, between that and this. Like this kind of experience, this everyday lived experience is not that same kind of experience. It's not empirical in the external measuring sense of it because it's internal, and at least as it is right now, it's not something we measure the same way. And I think there's quite an interesting bit of tension between uh, yeah. So that's something that stands up to me, and I know I'm kind of, I don't know, dipping a bit here, but I'll read the next part. On the other hand, there be members in the cathedral phenomenology, which has traditionally been seen naturalism as nothing sort of a mortal sin, the sin against the Holy Ghost of philosophy, as Herschel famously put it. Although devoting less energy, at least superficially, to placating the phenomenological side, Verla also insisted, especially in his later text, that natural sciences have to be phenomenalized somehow into the edifice of phenomenology, which is really like this is basically the crux of, as you know, I know this is probably why you picked the paper, man. I'm kind of saying for myself and for a future audience, which is probably mostly myself in the future, but we forgot all this. Like this is why I started making the blog post was about that. It was about this specific topic. And so I'm really, it's nice to see it put it in this context where it's nice to see this sort of commentary on what the choices strategically, like from the viewpoint of someone trying to deal with the cathedral and the science, like natural, hard, rigorous, respected, the science of the day as it was, and what that is. You could say sort of empirical establishment, maybe. I know that's quite fair to say. And you can dovetail into reductionism, but I think that's not the best way to do it. But just the different camps and the murmurs of the different cathedrals, I think is a really nice way to think about that. And I'm curious to read more. Like I don't know the context of this statement at all. That apparently was by Herschel. Um, do you have any sense of like this what it means, the sin of the Holy Ghost against the Holy Ghost of philosophy, as in trying to make this, why was naturalism bad? Like, what does that mean here? I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know, but my first guess, only having this context, would be something like when naturalist philosophy, when naturalism leads you to like question your experience or something, or to have doubt in the thing that arguably you it's not even possible to have doubt about, like your immediate first personal experience. Like, yeah, you can have doubt in the sense that you might think you I don't know, if you have tinnitus, like you can doubt that the ringing in your ears is coming from something in your environment, but you can't doubt that there's a ringing in your ears. Just like as an example of this thing that's supposed to be like, there's like a word that philosophers use, inexorable. I don't know, basically undoubtable. And I think the phenomenology term mentioned in this paper, the ungo behindable, something like that. So when naturalism or science leads you to doubt that, there's something, I don't know, that seems especially bad. So maybe it's something like that. I'm trying to think of what would merit the word, like sin.
Well, and that's, yeah, I was just gonna say something about that too. I agree with what you're saying, and I think to go a bit maybe more extreme, and maybe extreme in the wrong direction. Things I wrote were like materialism and his take on sort of reductionism. Like if you try to appease natural, and by naturalize here I kind of mean like hardcore biology, and sort of basically see Fuchs' uh, um, disagreements with neurobioreductionism. I feel like it's kind of, maybe it's a nod in that direction of, if you try too hard to make it work there, you're going to basically be walking into the ground of, well, your personal experience doesn't really exist, and or isn't really relevant. It's just it's just the neurons, or just it's just you can kind of count it out. That's one version of it. I also think there's sort of, when we hear the sin against the Holy Ghost in philosophy, I think there's also kind of like how do I say, against the Holy Ghost of philosophy, as in, I wonder how literally. I have to look at the context, but a very speculative guess would be, how literally is that a, like, I guess literally as in Christian, like, it's like sinning against the Holy Ghost, I think would be a metaphor of like, you're disagreeing that there's like different parts the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and the Spirit, or whatever. Like that. There's sort of these different but important parts as to why they're different, but also the same. Like this belief, and like that there's subjective and different parts of what that is. And I wonder if he means like to that extent of it, or just like the Holy Ghost of philosophy in a more secular sense of like the spirit of inquiry or something to that nature. I'm curious. I'm looking at that. So.
I don't know if he's bringing religion into it, then he's really giving away the game. That it's not really that maybe experience and the science of the brain aren't really compatible. And I mean, it does seem a little strange to like, the reason why we do science is to find things like independent of like ideology or belief. And if you're going to say, well, experience is just another form of belief or something like that, then it's kind of like, well, then why are we doing that? I mean, that's that I don't know. Like, I can kind of see the point here, but like, yeah, I guess he's arguing though that Varela's trying to unite two things that he doesn't think need to be united, and so I guess that's his opinion, but I wouldn't know that for sure, of course.
Yeah, and I guess allegedly his argument will be, and here's why you shouldn't even bother trying to let's discard that notion.
Yeah, he talks about like different senses in which you could unite the two. So, and he contrasts Varela's with, he says like analytic isomorphisms or phenomenological isomorphisms. There are a couple examples that Voros talks about of like what it could look like to have constraints from first personal to third personal, what it could look like to actually unite these two sides. But then basically his conclusion is an interpretation of like Varela's conclusion is that simply thinking of the sides as two or as completely separate from each other, that gets you into trouble. You have to go to this non-dual space of thought, which I guess I felt like I understood what he was pointing to, even though at times it felt,
well,
I don't know.
So, and I'm asking you blind because I don't know his argument, and my question would be totally out of bounds, and if so, just say that. I think we've heard a similar criticism of Varela in that he, and I'll try to keep my point simple. A similar criticism of Varela in that by nature of him presenting it as different, he's sort of inherently creating a problem and saying they're different. And I forget who it was, but I think someone else basically suggested that same thing of like, no, you have to approach it from, and maybe this is even like Fuchs's gesturing towards it of, well, we need to have something where it's not seen as this duality. But does that sound right to you, or do you see what I guess Boros as going even in a different direction than that, or saying something specifically outside of that? I don't know.
No, I think like Varela and Fuchs are kind of getting at the same thing when they talk about the problems of thinking dualistically, like the problems of starting with a mind-body divide. They like do it differently. I really do feel like they're talking about the same thing.
I have a very just a comment that's, I don't know how to place it, but my random-ish, my slightly detextualized, lacking context comment is wondering about And I know that the answer is because Verla's a big name, you know, like he is a landmark of all this stuff, and it is also full of intrigue because he was building stuff and then didn't finish some of the things, and we have to build these conjectures like big name, didn't finish.
Such a wide scope of topics you wrote about also, like cybernetics and biology,
Right.
phenomenology. Like,
And I feel like he's, and I'm saying like versus. I need to come up with something better about this. But actually, well, honestly, I think that might be something I have to write a paper about and what I think about. The Bowden 2010 problem is in Bowden's huge, like history of cognitive science book, recommended adamantly by Dr. Johann John, even if he doesn't agree with all of Bowden's views about what people or mining machines are. 2007, I believe, I think that's the year, is like the line, to me, the line in time where up until this point, you could kind of keep track of everything and know the different schools of thought and development that were doing operations in this space. And then after that point, it's like there's just so much and so much variation, so little unison. And I guess like I almost feel like there's this meta intra and inter and whatever, like the whole disciplinary space um, um, like it, I don't know how to I don't know the best words for this, but it's sort of like I think Varela, there's almost kind of like a sense of when people used to say, "Oh, Michael Jordan ruined the game," like Michael Jordan ruined the game of basketball in the sense that okay, Verla maybe ruined the game a little bit with what he did in his big name, his efforts, but more so than beyond just beyond that, it's more like in the time at the peak or the end, maybe the end of his career is more to say, there was still this sort of cohesiveness in the field and in learning and in research and before you know even before deep learning and everything else we know like it was just sort of a unique time. It's kind of like this is an analogy you guys won't get necessarily, but I'm going to say it for myself. Kind of like Nebraska looking back at the 1990s because it was when they won. Like the team I follow was really really good like 30 years ago, and they've been horrible since in some ways. In the sense that it was a time of reference, and I'm not saying people haven't done things since then, but a little bit sort of like I feel it's a really tough thing to get around because there isn't a. I feel like maybe the closest thing to this right now is maybe sort of like I think maybe like in reality Ines Hippolito, but she's not as big of a name. And there's like Friston doing this literally saying, oh, let's do unify the cognitive sciences with this stuff. And it's I don't really know what his take of phenomenology is at all. But I don't know. Anyway,
like you're saying that if you have like there's a heyday of some field that people always reference that as the comparator, and they say, "What are people doing now? Nothing." And of course, they're doing things now. It's just that it's not like it doesn't compare with the heyday.
well, and I don't think there's been a dominant. like, okay, we have 4E, right? But it kind of, and even saying this as Varela's stuff, which are one of the critiques that led us down the road we're on now, is like, did the Martini paper, where it was like, did cognitive science embrace, Varela's embodiment? Did it actually go to the root of the 4Es or not? And it's sort of like the shadow. I guess it's sort of the shadow of it, plus um, plus the fact that, like, if you really wanted to know, and that's kind of what I mean about the 2007 problem. If you really wanted to know kind of what happened, like, maybe you can't. Like, there's sort of the being able to comprehend all the different machinations and where things are going is maybe a little bit out of reach right now. I'm not saying it is or good is or can't be or should be or would be or whatever. I wonder what Bodum was getting at there squares with all of this, in the sense you have this mammoth bigger unfinished stuff. It was this sort of big opportunity, and then you obviously have a lineage. You have depressed. You have people carrying on the lineage, and they're not discrediting that at all. But there's sort of this space that is there, and I forget what year was this paper?
The Voros paper is 2023. It was recent.
Oh, nice. Okay, it's right there. Cool. Okay.
I have one thought about, like, not what happened to cognitive science, but like what happened to neurophenomenology, maybe. I guess one thought is, this was like fairly recently that, I don't know, Varela died in like, it was like 2003 or something. And people who studied with him have papers that have come out like recently. So I guess one answer is like, it's going on. It's not like maybe other strands of cognitive science. It's just it's not. And I guess this is my second point. It kind of is putting the ball in science's court. Like the type of philosophy that it is, it's like trying to push science in a particular direction and trying to push like specifically brain sciences and mind sciences in specific directions. And that's like, that requires some feedback from like scientific study. And that seems like a real challenge, because that's just not like the type of science that Varela was calling for is just so different from what the practice of science looks like now. And I think that's largely because the practice of science now is driven by non-scientific factors and interests.
Yeah, I think we all know this, and I'll just say it. I've said it many times. I think your point is really good, even to put it out that way. And the let's go back to CBMM. Like I was just saying, it kind of fits what I just said, in the sense of, I was just at a major group saying, I don't know, like, I think neuro AI is crested. Obviously, that's a specific viewpoint from a specific group of people. But I think it may be, it may be, say,
There's people who don't agree with something will always say something is crested or passe. And like, it may or may not be, but that's their opinion, because they're selling something else and they want you to buy it. I mean, this is like same thing with like, kind of assessing people's legacy. It's like, I have a way of thinking about this person's work that's kind of like interpretive. It's not, it's kind of like, I think that maybe they meant this, and then someone else thinks they meant something else. It's really kind of hard to, make any conclusive statements from that.
Yeah, and I think I think that's obviously a factor. I think there's a factor of the way, in terms of what Amanda just said, like the way that is phenomenology is trying to push science. Like it's very, there's phenomenology has these very interesting things. That'd be a fun thing to, I don't know, write a paper about, but a blog, I don't know, like the political agendas of phenomenology. I don't know, like phenomenology isn't inert. It kind of, some branches of it, and even like I'm like I see kind of a struggle of there being this sort of implication saying, oh, you need to value this. Well, you know, that's cool, but here's the establishment way, or here's what the funny is, here's the current narrative, and this too. And I don't want to. I'm very careful because I want to be careful because I don't want to just say, oh, well, nobody likes phenomenology because they're politically partisan against us. I think that's there may be elements of that, but I don't want to. That's not the way I want to go, and I feel like it's just those challenges may exist as well. Okay, I know we've blown off course here. I'm sorry, but we return to the paper. I don't know if you want to go back to this part or somewhere else, Amanda. But
I was already jumping around, so I guess what did I highlight there?
This last highlight was elucidating the structure of dynamic experience of ultimately a question of pragmatics and learning method, not of a priority orientation.
Right. I thought that was a really nice like that really gets to what On Becoming Aware was after. You know, learning by doing, you can talk about it so much, but you can only get so far by thinking and talking and writing. And there's an aspect of doing that's necessary.
Yeah, I think there might be a difference here too, in that like Varela's work was sort of, it was advocating for neurophenomenology, but then also advocating for dynamical systems and doing some other things as well. So autopoiesis and things like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just one thing. I mean, some of those things have sort of penetrated, say, the neurosciences in different ways and influenced people in different ways. So it's kind of hard to say, like, well, Varela's legacy is neurophenomenology when he did a lot of other things.
Right. But at the same time, I think you can definitely see a thread that like unites all the things that he worked on. Like what was exemplified in On Becoming Aware was like this first personal side of things. And obviously a lot of his writing was on phenomenology. But then he also wrote about the physical sciences. And so, and when you look at the concepts from his writings on the physical sciences, I think you gain insight into the type of like into the neuro side of neurophenomenology, like the kinds of things he would he thought were compelling, like I don't know, areas of inquiry for science.
Yeah.
That's one thing that this paper mentions later when talking about these three braids. One of them was like, what are the neurobiological mechanisms? And then Voros explains Varela's version of inactivism, which is, obviously intimately connected with autopoiesis and these like physical sciences.
Yeah, this is a really interesting. I'll have to read this for next time because we're almost out of time. I do want to go through this because this seems like really, even just all these different little chunks here, and the way there's so much context that I really appreciate hearing, because some of it I sort of understood, but not really. Yeah, not really everything the way it's been presented here. Um, Thus, the main goal of the original phenomenological program is to open the space for methodological experimentation, a new pragmatic playfield that would bring together cutting-edge techniques and analysis from the scientific side, and very consistent development of phenomenological investigation. Right? The hypothesis was only a balanced discipline, as you mentioned, external empirical, is going to make us think closer to bridging the biological mind, experiential mind gap. Yeah. Yeah. Oops, sorry.
I liked the phrase resonant passages.
I just saw that somewhere. Where did it go?
It's highlighted in the middle of the page. Like
Yeah.
I'd seen the phrase generative passages or like mutual constraints, and he uses a lot of different terms for the same thing, but I hadn't seen resonant passages before.
And I'm kind of making these notes, the book notes, but you can just copy them in there if you want to use these screenshots. However, when it comes to spelling exactly what meant by these passages or bridges, things get a little murky. According to Varela, they are mutually constrained and validated from both logic domains, where the phenomenal terms stand as explicit terms directly linked by experience to rigorous examination, e.g. reduction and variance in their subjective communication. Look at this, the three, for recent interpretations on neurophenomenology along these lines in Bitbull, Boros and Bitbull. The Wittgenstein parallels rather loosely. It's meant to be illustrative, not exegetical. The main point is that instead of theorizing about what cannot be solved conceptually, we should seek to resolve the issue by allowing the dissolution to manifest, show itself in this concrete example, but not the early Wittgenstein, of course, through doing action. So do we interpret this basically as less hand-wringing about what can't conceptually be solved in terms of theoretically determining what we can't do and just trying to build out what we can do? Or how do you interpret that?
Basically so it's referencing the hard problem, and I read that as meaning instead of like thinking through solutions to the hard problem, I don't know, like look to personal experience and like see the mind body unity or something and move from there. Like we experience this solution to the hard problem. We experience the unity of mind and body. So I didn't fully catch the Wittgenstein connection. In this footnote, I guess I understood when he mentioned Wittgenstein elsewhere, but yeah, I kind of read this just as what he was getting at before.
Okay.
Yeah, this same highlight is like this. Yeah, this is what I had in mind.
This one here?
Yeah.
Transmutation. Sounds like Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, yeah. Conceptual articulation will have to wait for the dust of pragmatic toil to settle, and only then proceed to do its bidding. Hmm. Okay. I think I'm gonna press pause here because I feel like this is definitely getting a bit at what we hoped the hopes and dreams, hopes and despairs paper would be. It seems like kind of a step on that avenue, or I don't know, walkway or whatever it is. There's a lot of things here that are intriguing. So it seemed like a decently long paper. I don't know how much that is references, but it's at least I'm seeing 26 pages or so text here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to picking that up for next time and actually tending it a bit more. Anything we want to say? We were basically at page 66. So anything we want to say for next time? I'm happy to continue this, and anything else we want to look at or think about next time.
Yeah, I'm happy just finishing this paper. Maybe updating on project progress again.
Yeah, we should probably try to challenge ourselves to do the paper writing stuff. I think there's plenty,
Yes.
and then this seems like a really nice paper. I think it's a little higher quality and more useful than the one I recently showed. So I'm happy to look at it. Yeah, okay. And we are meeting tomorrow for the conclusion to the Nerva
Yes.
Woman book. Wow, sorry to hear. Yeah.
When do you
And
have
we
to
can
have your
talk tomorrow
paper?
about what we want to do with that.
Oh, what was that, Bradley? Sorry.
When do you want to have your? When do you need to have your papers in by? What date? Like when
I
do you
think
need to
mine's
submit?
December 1st.
Okay.
It's just a presentation. I don't think you submit the paper. It's a half-hour presentation. I'm not sure if that's including a Q&A.
Oh.
I think it is. I think it's maybe 20-minute presentation, 10-minute Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
You don't have to submit a paper at all, or you?
I don't think so.
Huh.
And then it seemed kind of like, I don't know, I don't have much experience with online conferences, but it kind of from the program looks like it's going to be like the embodied intelligence one, which was a bunch of parallel sessions happening at once and like really speedy. And then keynotes also happening at the same time as the presentations. So a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
And they asked the organizers asked participants to sign up to like moderate some of the parallel sessions. I'm anticipating it'll be disorganized, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's like the first time they're doing something, it's gonna be a mess, but that's okay. I should try to read some more opinion stuff beforehand so I can really have some good conversations like with her stuff in mind. But honestly, I'm grad school is a lot to juggle all this stuff, so I'm trying to really manage things as best I can. Yeah, let's double check on all that. I saw an email from them, but I think the last one I got was a couple weeks, like a week ago or something. And I don't know if I did the other part of it yet, like the sign up for the other things or not. So I have to look at that. But let's have a major like the focus of next meeting should be everything for ISPSM. I think we should put it that way. And then after we talk about that for a while, logistically or otherwise, we can continue with the paper. So I think that's fair.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? I think that's it for today. I will look forward to the Nova discussion tomorrow. Yeah. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
See you.